Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Corporal Jeanette McNeely. Today, we commemorate the 75th anniversary of the worst air disaster to occur on Australian territory. In the early hours of the 7th of September, 1943, a United States Army Air Force B-24D Liberator bomber, known as Pride of the Cornhuskers, took off from Jackson Airfield at Port Moresby, carrying 4 500-pound bombs fueled with almost 12,000 litres of high-octane aviation fuel. Moments later, it crashed into the jungle next to a convoy of trucks carrying Australian soldiers from the 2nd 33rd Battalion, who were waiting to board transport aircraft that would take them to Nabstadt. 3 of the bombs exploded in the blaze that erupted after the impact. Machine gun ammunition, mortar rounds and hand grenades, rifle and Bren gun ammunition cooked off as the fires progressed. The men of D Company, 2nd 33rd Battalion, took the full brunt of the inferno. All 11 crewmen of the Liberator were killed on impact. 62 Australians died as a result of the crash, including 2 truck drivers of 158 Transport Company. Another 92 men were injured but survived. In this evening's ceremony, we commemorate those who died, as well as remembering those who returned. We warmly welcome the members of the Indigenous Pre-Recruitment Program. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and their families that support them. We also acknowledge the members of the RSL and Services Club Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland for watching this ceremony broadcast across Australia. During the ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. Please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Warrant Officer Class 2, Jack Richard Reinke. Jack Reinke was born on the 12th of May 1917 at Blythe, South Australia, the son of John and Agnes Reinke. He grew up on the family farm at Narrady, near Crystal Brook, and attended school in the local area. In early May 1925, his father died of pneumonia, leaving Agnes to bring up the 6 children. By the time the Second World War began, Jack Reinke was working as a labourer in Queensland, though he'd become engaged to a young lady back in South Australia by the name of Bettina. Rather than return to South Australia on the 19th of November 1940, Reinke enlisted for service with the 2nd AIF at Hughenden in Queensland. He was sent to the 2nd AIF Reinforcement Depot for training, where he remained until May 1940, when, along with other reinforcements, he embarked from Sydney, bound for England. Arriving in England in early June, Reinke was sent to Tidworth, where he joined the 72nd Battalion. In October, the battalion was redesignated to the 2nd 33rd Battalion and moved from Tidworth to Colchester. Reinke was promoted to acting corporal around the same time. Several months of intense training followed against the backdrop of the Battle of Britain, to which Reinke and his mates were keen observers. His battalion was designated as a mobile reserve to counter a potential German invasion of England, though by the end of the year, the threat had passed. At the beginning of 1941, the 2nd 33rd Battalion travelled from England to the Middle East. At the start of June, it was involved in the invasion of Syria and then took part in the fighting at Merjoun and Jazin. After the surrender of Vichy French forces, the battalion was involved in garrison duties at Lebanon and then occupied defensive positions at the port of Tripoli. In February 1942, the 2nd 33rd Battalion returned to Australia and began training for the war against Japan. After a period of leave, during which Reinke visited his family, the battalion moved to Caboolture in Queensland. 3 months of intense training followed before it sailed for Port Moresby at the end of August. Earlier in the month, Reinke had been promoted to acting sergeant. The battalion disembarked at Port Moresby on the 9th of September. 4 days later, the men were in the thick of the fighting in Oriwaba. The Australians were forced back to Imta Ridge, and during the withdrawal of the 2nd 33rd, formed the rear guard. Soon after the battle, the Japanese, having reached the limits of the supply line, began withdrawing. The 2nd 33rd Battalion was involved in pursuing the Japanese back across the Owen Stanley Ridge. On reaching the beachheads, the battalion took part in the Battle of Gona. By this stage, the battalion had suffered heavy casualties and in December was withdrawn to Port Moresby. The 2nd 33rd Battalion returned to Australia in early January 1943. Only weeks later, Reinke was devastated to hear the news that his brother, Acting Corporal William Henry Reinke, had been killed at Sananda on the 21st of January while serving with the 2nd 10th Battalion. He was 22 years old. In mid-March, Reinke was confirmed in the rank of sergeant. Later that month, he was hospitalised with malaria. He recovered quickly and returned to his battalion in early April. In June, he was promoted to acting Warrant Officer Class 2 and became the Company Sergeant Major of D Company. The 2nd 33rd Battalion returned to New Guinea in late July and spent the next month preparing for an airlift to Nadzab in support of the American paratroopers. In the early hours of the 7th of September, the men of the 2nd 33rd Battalion were waiting in trucks at the end of Jackson's airfield for their plane flights to Nadzab. The men of Delta Company were in the rearmost trucks. The men could hear movement of aircraft preparing for takeoff from Jackson's airfield, some 700 metres away. Soon after, a B-24 Liberator bomber took off, flying low over the Australians. This was followed soon after by a second B-24, nicknamed Pride of the Cornhuskers. Immediately after takeoff, some of the Australians noticed the plane was coming straight at them, and a number of men began to run, trying to escape the impending disaster. The Liberator could not get the lift required to take it over the trees at the end of the airstrip. The aircraft's port wing dipped, clipped a tree and sheared off. sending the bomber crashing into the trees next to D Company's trucks. The resulting explosion of the fully laden bomber engulfed the D Company trucks. In the resulting inferno, at least 30 men from D Company were on fire. Those who were uninjured were quickly joined by men from other companies trying to extinguish the flames. A member of another company witnessed a badly burned Reinke emerge from the flames. "Can I have a cigarette?" he asked. After drawing on it once, he died. All 11 members of the B-24 and 15 Australians, including Reinke, were killed. 45 would later die from their burns, and a further 92 were injured. Reinke was laid to rest in the Bamama War Cemetery. He was 26 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, amongst more than 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Acting Warrant Officer Jack Richard Reinke, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub of Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We'd like to thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.